Mission Impossible Final Reckoning review. I'm also gonna be doing some
leg raises.
So, to my understanding, this is the last Mission Impossible movie, and it is also part 2 of Dead Reckoning. So just a quick recap of what happened in Dead Reckoning. So this rogue AI called the Entity is basically taking over the world's cyberspace. Governments from all over the world are trying to gain control of it to basically control the world. And our main guy, Ethan, is trying to destroy it. And the main plot of the first one is obtaining the key. And this key is meant to open the source code, which will then lead to destroying it, controlling it, whatever. That's the first movie. And alongside this AI entity is this guy called Gabriel, who's been in the previous movies before. Okay, right off the bat, I'll be honest, this movie's a bit of a mess. It still has very enjoyable scenes and moments in it, but it's a bit of a mess of a movie. I'm also not going to be mentioning any major spoilers, and if I do, I will give timestamps on where to skip it. So the movie starts off with a little exposition dump through one of the self-destructing messages, which is, you know, cool to see throughout the series. And I honestly didn't mind it because it just kind of caught us up on what's happened. But basically, the AI is now at a point where it's slowly taking over all the world's nuclear arsenals, and it's even getting people that are kind of praising it like it's a godlike entity. And it is real doomsday situation. Everywhere's martial law. That's the situation. Even now, I couldn't tell if it was a creative choice or not, but the beginning of the movie was really disorientating. I thought it had to do with something he did in the very beginning, which I'll mention in a sec. But there's a lot of cuts back and forth throughout time of like the very first few scenes in the movie, and it's kind of like, what is happening? So Ethan and his team are trying to get Gabriel still, because Gabriel was the one that was working for the entity, but we find out pretty much immediately that the entity's cut him off because he failed in the first movie. And in doing so, they find this cradle-like device that the entity controls, and Paris, who's the French woman, who is played by Pomme, who, by the way, in the first movie was just weirdly deranged for like seemingly no reason, because in this movie they're a very calm, chill person. I don't know why they were so crazy in the first one, maybe just because they're French, but she says this will change you. And he gets into this entity's device to basically communicate with it. But I just thought this was the dumbest thing he probably did in the whole movie, because he just went directly into the enemy's control, who we've been shown in the last movie wants to kill him, because he's the only one that really wants to destroy the entity rather than control it. So it's like, what are you doing, Ethan? But from here he gets like it kind of gives him visions of the future almost, but now we kind of get glimpses of the rest of the movie. And this movie does have awesome Mission Impossible-esque sequences in land, sea, and sky, okay? And it is very satisfying on that front. And I think you can suspend your disbelief in some of these scenes that he gets himself in, because it is Mission Impossible. That's kind of the whole thing. You can forgive some of it. And without going into too much plot detail, he turns himself into the US government basically early on because he thinks that's what the entity would least expect. And he communicates with the president, who actually has one of the more interesting little story points throughout this movie, because the US is basically one of the only nations left with control of their nukes. And we're, as the audience, told that the entity's not gonna, because you might be thinking, why doesn't the entity just do this now? We're told that the entity's not gonna nuke the world until he has control of all the nukes and can guarantee the outcome. And I still don't fully understand why the entity wanted to wipe out humanity, and I still don't think it's very clear. It doesn't really make any sense, but whatever. Also, I forgot to mention, when he spoke to this entity, he kept saying stuff like, "it is written," and I was just getting major Dune vibes, like Lisan Gaib. Is this machine the Lisan Gaib of the Mission Impossible universe? That's how I was feeling. It kept saying, as written. Main gripe I have with the Gabriel villain, right? Because it's still, same as the first movie, Gabriel and the entity are the main villains. Whenever Gabriel's on screen, he's like comically evil, and he just kind of spams NPC dialogue like, "someone you love will die tonight. I win, Hunt. You will bring it to me. I always win." It's just stuff like that every time you see him. I started laughing later on in the movie because I feel like it's all he does. He doesn't have much dialogue out of one-liners, and he spams it. It's kind of funny. But back to the basic plot. So after he's turned himself in, he's basically gone to the president saying, "Don't destroy the world to stop the entity. Give me time. I can do it without all these casualties that will come if the US unleashes their nukes on the world." So he does his mission with his team. And as always, he's communicating with everyone. His team's doing their own thing. And it's just a bunch of people basically hoping stuff goes right. And you know how it goes in these movies. You know how it goes. One thing I did like about this movie is there were quite a few callbacks to the previous ones. Nothing too crazy, but if you're a Mission Impossible fan, you'll like it. Especially a character's inclusion later on. So the villains in this, the entity, Gabriel, and honestly the governments of the world, primarily US and Russia in this one. The governments are the only ones that are kind of prevalent throughout the movie, because weirdly the entity, despite being the main issue, doesn't actually have a lot of interaction throughout the movie other than the start and at the end. And in the first movie, like Dead Reckoning, it was a lot more prevalent throughout, but it really didn't actually do much this one other than just be the overall looming threat that forced everything to happen. Another completely random point is I kind of respect Tom Cruise for casting Hayley Atwell and then not making it a romantic relationship with his character and just having platonic relationship. I think he's done that a lot in these movies, and it's actually, you know, respect. It's cool to just see the main gal not just be a love interest for once. Okay, I'm gonna get into some minor plot spoilers, so if you don't want to hear those at all, skip to this timestamp and then you'll be safe. So one of the impossible mission aspects you have to do in the movie was, so get the device out the submarine that we've learned from the first one. The thing is, during the submarine mission, when it's finally time for him to get out, the submarine has basically tumbled over while he's in it, which I think is kind of weird because it's been 12 years down the bottom, it finally moves. I get it, he used the device to drain the ship, but how would that even work if it got exploded? I don't get it, whatever. He has to take off his suit that was keeping him alive at low pressure to even get out of it. Well, we get like a death fake out when he's coming to the top, and then he somehow lives it. I don't know how, like, they did a lot of fake outs in this movie. I think they get away with it being presumably the last movie, but there's a scene later in the movie where they're on planes, and he's holding onto a plane, moving in the air for like 10 plus minutes. The energy and the stamina and the strength needed to do that is insane. And Tom Cruise is like 60 something. I think his character is meant to represent his age too. Just a bit insane, but I liked it still. I did like these action scenes, okay? One other quick bit, you know I mentioned earlier how the entity kind of has acolytes now doing its job for him? This was kind of forced for like one scene with the president and one scene when he's in a submarine, right? But this submarine he's in, this isn't the one he was swimming in. This one with US government agents had someone on it that wanted to take him out for the entity, but this submarine was said to not be part of, like, it doesn't have access to the outside world really, so how would the entity even get in it? It doesn't make sense. Again, I say it gets away with it because it's Mission Impossible, so a lot of these you can suspend your disbelief, but just so much stuff happened where I just thought, like, it's pushing the boundaries a bit far. And a lot of interactions and scenes that happened, just I don't even think could have been, like, especially that cradle scene at the start, did they need to have that in? I feel like that information could have been conveyed to him in a way that wouldn't, like, kind of be world breaking. I don't know. I also think this is a general issue in movies when you create an entity that's so strong and overpowered that you have to come up with like weird loopholes and logic to even make anything make sense. One of the villain motifs too was a lot of the things that he's done throughout the series have had a like snowballing effect throughout. So something happened in the third movie ended up being very relevant to this movie and in some of the other movies too. So it's gonna be like, no matter how many people you save, your actions still have consequence. And that's kind of what this whole movie and everything's amounted to. Like everything he's done has amounted to this. So it is a finale, but again, the way this movie ends, I'm not gonna say how it ends, but it does leave it open for like something happening afterwards. And it's just like, why do that? I reckon he's gonna try and pump out one more. I reckon Big Tommy's gonna do one more movie. That's just my guess, all right? But with that being said, TLDR, the action sequences were awesome as always, but there was just so many random things that happened, a lot of disorientating scenes, a lot of scenes that didn't really make sense, and just a lot of wacko, schmacko confusion, okay? I think they were dealing with too many like little details and it just got messy. But yeah, that's Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. I give the movie probably only a 6. Thing is, it's still an enjoyable movie. It is very long though. It's basically 3 hours, so do with that as you will. But with that being said, it also pains me to give it a 6 because Tom Cruise is one of my favorite actors of all time. He's the action star that I grew up watching, and it remains true. So I'm still gonna watch everything he ever does, but sorry, Tommy, just a 6 on this one. As always, stay sexy.